The diner's neon sign flickered, casting a red glow over my brother's trembling hands. Ethan, barely 19, sat across from me, his eyes fixed on the coffee mug like it held the answers to the universe. "Mark," he whispered, voice cracking. "I'm gay." The words hit like a freight train, not because they were new, but because they came from himmy little brother, the kid I'd raised, the one I'd sworn to protect. I'd spent years on stages, preaching to packed churches about curing people like him, my voice booming with certainty. Now, that certainty crumbled, and the man I'd been felt like a stranger. We were in Willow Creek, a sleepy Ohio town where everyone knew your business before you did. The diner was our refuge, a place where we'd shared milkshakes as kids, laughing over stupid jokes. Tonight, though, the air was thick with something heavier than nostalgia. Ethan's confession wasn't just a moment, it was a reckoning. I'd built my life on sermons, on the applause of strangers who loved my fire and brimstone rhetoric. I was Pastor Mark Reynolds, the golden boy of the evangelical circuit, the one who could make a crowd weep with a single verse. But here, in this cracked vinyl booth, I was just a brother, and I was failing. "Say something," Ethan pleaded, his voice barely above a whisper. His brown eyes, so like our mother's, searched mine for a lifeline. I wanted to reach across the table, to pull him into a hug like when he was 5 and scared of thunderstorms. But my hands stayed glued to my mug, the coffee long gone cold. What could I say? That I'd spent a decade telling people his truth was a sin. That I'd written books, given TED-style talks, and pocketed donations for fixing something that wasn't broken. I need time. I managed, my voice hoarse. Ethan's face fell, and I hated myself for it. He didn't deserve he's a brother too coward to face his own hypocrisy. "It's not you," I added quickly. "It's me. I need to process." He nodded, but the hurt in his eyes was a blade to my chest. "I thought you'd get it," he said, standing up. "You're my brother, not one of your congregations." He grabbed his jacket and walked out, the diner's bell jingling like a mockery of our broken bond. I sat there, staring at the empty booth, the weight of my past pressing down. 10 years ago, I'd been a different man, angry, lost, clinging to the church like a lifeline after our parents died. I was 20. Ethan was 9. And I'd thrown myself into faith to fill the void. Somewhere along the way, I'd bought into the lie that love could be wrong, that people could be fixed. I'd preached it with conviction, believing I was saving souls. Now, I saw the cost, my brother, walking away, thinking I didn't love him. The next morning, I drove to the church where I'd built my name. Willow Creek Baptist was a modest brick building, but its stage had been my kingdom. I stood at the pulpit, staring at the empty pews, remembering the crowds that had cheered my gay cure sermons. I'd been so sure, so righteous. But Ethan's words echoed in my head, unraveling everything. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through old photos Ethan at his high school graduation, grinning in his cap and gown. Ethan teaching me to skateboard when he was 12. Both of us laughing until we couldn't breathe. How had I missed who he was? I called him, but he didn't answer. I texted, "I'm sorry. Let's talk. Please." No reply. Desperate, I drove to his apartment, a tiny studio above the town's only bookstore. He wasn't there. The barista downstairs, a girl with pink hair and a nose ring, said he'd left an hour ago, looking upset. "He's your brother, right?" she asked, her tone sharp. "Maybe check the park. He goes there when he's stressed." The park was a short walk, its paths lined with oak trees and memories. Ethan and I used to play catch here, back when life was simpler. I found him on a bench by the pond, staring at the water. "Ethan," I called softly, sitting beside him. He didn't look at me, but he didn't leave either. "Progress. Maybe. I didn't mean to hurt you," I said. I've got a lot to unlearn." He stayed silent, picking at a loose thread on his jeans. "I've been wrong," I admitted, the words burning my throat. "About a lot. But I love you. And I'm here. I want to understand." He finally looked at me, his eyes red. "You don't get it, Mark. I've been scared to tell you for years. You're the guy who says people like me are broken. How am I supposed to trust you?" His words were a mirror, reflecting every sermon I'd preached, every dollar I'd taken. I wanted to argue, to defend the man I'd been, but there was no defense. "You're right," I said. "I've been wrong. But I'm listening now. Tell me what I need to do." Ethan exhaled, his shoulders slumping. "Just be my brother. Not the pastor. Not the guy on stage. Just Mark." I nodded, my chest tight. "I can do that." But even as I said it, I knew it wouldn't be easy. My past was a shadow, and I'd have to face it to earn back his trust. The days after Ethan's confession were a blur of guilt and sleepless nights. I'd lie awake, replaying every sermon I'd given, every face in the crowd that had nodded along to my words. I'd built a career on certainty, but now doubt was my only companion. Ethan agreed to meet again, but his guard was up, and I couldn't blame him. I'd spent years preaching against who he was. How could a few words in a park undo that? We met at a coffee shop this time, a neutral spot outside Willow Creek where no one knew us. Ethan looked tired. His usual spark dimmed. "I've been out to my friends for a year," he said, stirring his latte. "They've been great. But you, I was terrified to tell you." "Why?" I asked, though I knew the answer. I needed to hear it, to face the damage I'd done. He leaned back, crossing his arms. "Your pastor, Mark. The guy who wrote Path to Purity. The guy who said being gay was a choice. A sin. I grew up hearing that. Mark. From you." Each word was a punch. Not because he was wrong, but because he was right. My book, a bestseller in evangelical circles, had been my pride. Now, it was a weight around my neck. "I'm sorry," I said, the words feeling small against the enormity of my mistakes. "I didn't know you were. I didn't know." "You didn't ask," he shot back. "You were too busy saving souls to notice me." He was right. After our parents died, I'd thrown myself into the church, dragging Ethan along. I'd been parent, preacher, and provider, but I'd missed the part where I was supposed to listen. "I want to make this right," I said. "Tell me how." Ethan sighed, his expression softening just a fraction. "Meet my friends. See who I am when I'm not hiding. Maybe then you'll get it." That weekend, I went to a barbecue at his friend Lila's house, a colorful bungalow on the edge of town. Lila, the barista with pink hair, greeted me with a wary smile. Ethan's friends were mixartists, students, a nurse named Sam who wore a rainbow pin. They were warm but guarded, watching me like I might start preaching. I didn't blame them. My reputation preceded me. Ethan was different here. Lighter. He laughed, teased Sam about his terrible grilling skills, and seemed free. I'd never seen him like this. Not in years. It hit me how much he'd been hiding, even from me. When Lila pulled me aside to grab drinks, she didn't mince words. "Ethan loves you," she said, "but he's been carrying your words like a weight. If you're here to judge, leave now." "I'm not," I said, and I meant it. "I'm here to learn." She studied me, then nodded. "Good. He needs his brother, not a sermon." The barbecue stretched into the evening, and I listened more than I spoke. Sam told me about coming out to his Catholic family, how they disowned him for years before reconciling. Lila shared stories of pride marches, of finding community after leaving a small town like ours. Ethan watched me through it all, like he was waiting for me to bolt. I didn't. Not because it was easy. Every story challenged the beliefs I'd held for years, but because I owed him this. I owed him the truth of who he was. Driving home, I felt the first cracks in the wall I'd built around my faith. The church had been my anchor, but it had also blinded me. I'd preached about love while denying it to people like Ethan, like Sam, like Lila. The realization was a slow burn, searing away the man I'd been. Back at my apartment, I pulled Path to Purity from the shelf. The cover, with its bold red letters and my smiling face, felt like a mockery. I flipped through it, wincing at my own words. Homosexuality is a choice, a sin we can overcome with faith. I'd believed it then, or thought I did. Now, it read like fiction, cruel and disconnected from reality. I called Ethan the next day. "I'm reading," I said. "Not my book, other stuff. Books by people who've been where you are. I want to understand." He was quiet for a moment, then said, "That's a start." It was. But the road ahead was long, and I was only beginning to see how much I'd gotten wrong. Understanding was harder than I'd expected. I dove into books, articles, and video stories of queer lives, histories of the church's failures, science I'd once dismissed. Each page was a confrontation, forcing me to face the harm I'd caused. I'd preached to thousands, but how many had I hurt? How many had heard my words and felt less than human? Ethan and I started meeting weekly, usually at the park or the coffee shop. He'd talk. I'd listen. He told me about his first crush, a boy in 10th grade who'd moved away. About the fear of being found out. The nights he'd cried himself to sleep, knowing what I preached. Each story was a thread, weaving a picture of a brother I'd failed to know. One evening, he brought Sam to our meetup. Sam was quiet but kind, with a dry humor that matched Ethan's. "We're not dating," Ethan clarified, catching my raised eyebrow. "Just friends. But he's important to me." Sam smiled, and I saw the trust between them, the kind Ethan didn't have with me anymore. "Not yet. I want to meet someone," Ethan admitted later, his voice soft. "But it's hard. Willow Creek isn't exactly a queer paradise." He laughed, but it was hollow. I thought of the town's whispers, the sideways glances at anyone who didn't fit the mold. I'd fueled those whispers once, hadn't I? "I'm sorry," I said, the words becoming a refrain. "I made this place harder for you." He shrugged, but his eyes were heavy. "You didn't make the world, Mark. You just made it louder." His words stuck with me, echoing as I drove to the church the next Sunday. I hadn't preached in weeks, claiming a personal sabbatical. The truth was, I couldn't face the pulpit. Not with Ethan's voice in my head. Not with the stories of his friends ringing true. The congregation noticed my absence, and the whispers were growing. Pastor Mark, the firebrand, was faltering. I met with Pastor Helen, my mentor, In her office. She was 60, sharp as ever, with a warmth that had always grounded me. "You're struggling," she said. "Not a question. Talk to me." I told her everything, Ethan. My past. The guilt that was eating me alive. She listened, her face unreadable. When I finished, she leaned forward. "Mark, you've got a choice. You can keep running from this, or you can face it. But facing it means facing your congregation and yourself." "I don't know what I believe anymore," I admitted. "How do I preach when I'm questioning everything?" "You don't," she said simply. "Not yet. You listen. You learn. Then you speak from truth, not habit." Her words were a lifeline, but they didn't ease the fear. The church was my home, my identity. If I admitted I'd been wrong, what would I lose? My career, my community, myself. That night, I found an old sermon online, one of my gay cure talks. I forced myself to watch, cringing at my own voice. So confident, so cruel. The comments were a mixed praise from believers, pain from those I'd hurt. One comment stopped me cold. "I heard you speak when I was 15. I tried to change who I was for years. I'm still trying to heal." I shut my laptop, my hands shaking. I'd wanted to save people, but I'd broken them instead. I thought of Ethan, of the years he'd hidden, afraid of me. I couldn't undo the past, but I could change the future. I had to. I called Ethan and asked him to come to the church. Not for a sermon, I promised. Just to talk. He agreed, reluctantly. When he arrived, I led him to the empty sanctuary. "This is where I lost myself," I said, gesturing to the pulpit. "I want to find my way back. With you." He looked around, his expression guarded. "What does that mean?" "It means I'm done preaching lies. I want to make things right. For you. For everyone I hurt. But I need your help to figure out how." For the first time in weeks, Ethan smiled a small, cautious smile. But it was enough. Ethan's smile gave me hope. But hope was fragile against the weight of reality. Willow Creek wasn't ready for a pastor who questioned his own sermons. The congregation was restless, and the board had started asking pointed questions about my sabbatical. I knew I couldn't hide forever, but stepping back into the pulpit felt like stepping into a minefield. Ethan and I kept meeting, and he started opening up more. He told me about a guy he'd met online, Jamie, who lived in Columbus. "He's an artist," Ethan said, his eyes lighting up. "We've been talking for weeks. He's different. Makes me feel like I can be myself." I wanted to be happy for him, but fear crept in. What if this town, my town, crushed that light in him? I started attending local LGBTQ+ events with Ethan, small gatherings in nearby cities. At first, I felt like an outsider, my past trailing me like a shadow. But the people I met, couples, activists, parents swearing at the caricatures I'd once preached about. They were real, with lives and loves as complex as anyone's. One night, at a community center panel, a trans woman named Maria shared her story of rejection and resilience. Her words hit hard. "The church told me I was wrong, but love taught me I was enough." I thought of Ethan, of the years he'd spent believing he wasn't enough. I thought of my own voice, amplifying that lie. After the panel, I approached Maria, my heart pounding. "I used to preach against people like you," I admitted. "I'm trying to change. How do I make amends?" She studied me, her gaze steady. "Listen. Learn. Then use your voice to lift up, not tear down. It won't erase the past, but it's a start. Her words stayed with me as I prepared to face my congregation. I couldn't keep dodging them. Ethan deserved a brother who was honest, and the people I'd hurt deserved accountability. I scheduled a special service, my first in months. The board was skeptical but agreed, hoping I'd return to form. I had no intention of doing that. The night before the service, Ethan came over. We sat on my couch, eating pizza. The tension between us softer now. "What are you going to say tomorrow?" he asked. "The truth," I said. "That I was wrong. That I hurt people. That I'm sorry." He raised an eyebrow. "You think they'll listen?" "I don't know," I admitted. "But I have to try." Sunday morning. The church was packed. Faces I'd known for years stared up at me. Some curious, some wary. I took a deep breath and began. "I've spent years preaching certainty," I said, my voice steady despite the knot in my stomach. "I told you who to love, who to judge. I was wrong. Love isn't a sin. It's a gift. And I've spent too long denying that to people I care about, people like my brother." The sanctuary was silent, the air heavy. I saw shock, anger, even tears. I kept going, telling them about Ethan, about the harm I'd caused, about the journey I was on. "I'm not here to preach today," I finished. "I'm here to listen, to learn, and to ask for your forgiveness." The response was mixed. Some walked out, their footsteps echoing. Others stayed, asking questions, sharing stories. A woman named Carol, whose son was gay, hugged me, tears in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. "I wish he'd heard this." Ethan was in the back, his expression unreadable. After the service, he approached. "That was brave," he said. "Stupid, maybe, but brave." I laughed, the sound shaky. "Worth it if you think so." He hugged me, quick and tight, and for the first time in months, I felt like his brother again. The fallout from my sermon was swift. Half the congregation stopped coming. The board called an emergency meeting, demanding I clarify my stance. I didn't back down, but I didn't have answers either. I was still figuring out what I believed, and that uncertainty scared them. It scared me too. Ethan, though, was a constant. He started bringing Jamie to our meetups, and I saw what he meant about him being different. Jamie was quiet, with a sharp wit and a kindness that put me at ease. They weren't officially together, but the way Ethan looked at him, hopeful, nervous, alive, made my heart ache. I wanted that for him, a love that didn't have to hide. One night, over beers at a Columbus bar, Jamie asked me point blank, "How do you go from preaching gay cure to this?" He gestured at himself and Ethan, laughing together. I took a sip, buying time. "Ethan," I said finally. He showed me what I was too blind to see. "I'm still unlearning, but I'm trying." Jamie nodded, his expression softening. "That's more than most do." Life in Willow Creek grew tense. My sermons, now focused on love and inclusion, drew smaller crowds but deeper conversations. Some members, like Carol, became allies, sharing their own journeys. Others left angry voicemails, calling me a traitor. My publisher dropped me, citing creative differences. I didn't care about the book sales, but the rejection stung. I'd been their golden boy, and now I was an outcast. Ethan noticed the strain. "You don't have to do this," he said one day, as we walked through the park. You could move. Start over somewhere else. No, I said. This is my home. I made a mess here, and I need to fix it. For you. For me. For everyone I hurt. He stopped walking, looking at me like he was seeing me for the first time. You're different, he said. Not just the preaching. You're softer. I laughed. Is that a compliment? It's a fact, he said, grinning. I like this Mark better. His words carried me through the harder days. The church board gave me an ultimatum: return to traditional values or resign. I chose the latter. It wasn't easy. Leaving the church meant leaving a piece of myself. But it also meant freedom, a chance to rebuild on truth instead of lies. I started volunteering at the community center where I'd met Maria. They were skeptical at first, but Ethan vouched for me. I helped with events, listened to stories, and slowly, I found a new purpose. It wasn't the stage, but it was real. I was learning to use my voice again, not to preach, but to amplify others. Ethan and Jamie grew closer, and I watched my brother fall in love. It was messy, uncertain, but beautiful. One night, Ethan called me, his voice shaking with excitement. Jamie asked me to move in with him. He said, in Columbus. I said yes. I was thrilled, but a pang of loss hit me. He'd be an hour away, building a life I wasn't part of. I'm proud of you, I said, meaning it. You deserve this. Thanks, Mark, he said, for everything. I hung up, tears in my eyes. I'd lost my church, my career, my old self. But I'd gained my brother, and that was worth everything. Months passed, and Ethan settled into his new life in Columbus. He and Jamie rented a small apartment, filled with art and laughter. I visited often, bringing pizza or bad jokes, feeling like a brother again. Willow Creek was quieter without him, but I was finding my place. The community center became my anchor, a place where I could listen, learn, and give back. One spring day, Ethan invited me to a pride event in Columbus. I hesitated. Old fears lingered, the ghost of my past sermons whispering doubt. But I went. For him. The festival was a riot of color, music, and joy. Ethan and Jamie held hands, their smiles brighter than the rainbow flags. I stood on the sidelines, a little overwhelmed, until Ethan pulled me into the crowd. You're part of this too, he said. I danced, awkwardly at first, then freely. Strangers hugged me, thanked me for being there. Maria, from the community center, found me and grinned. Look at you, preacher man. Not so preachy anymore. I'm trying, I said, laughing. Still got a lot to learn. She nodded. We all do. Keep showing up. That night, Ethan and I sat on his balcony, the city lights sprawling below. I was scared you'd never get here, he said. To this. To us. I was scared too, I admitted. I thought I'd lose everything if I changed. But I gained you. He smiled, his eyes shining. You didn't gain me, Mark. You just stopped pushing me away. His words were a gift, a reminder of what mattered. I'd spent years preaching a cure for something that didn't need fixing. Now, I was learning to preach something else, love, in all its forms. Not from a stage, but from my life. I started speaking at community events, sharing my stormy mistakes, my journey, My brother. The crowds were small, but the impact was real. People came up after. Some angry, some grateful, all human. I listened, and I learned, and I kept going. Willow Creek changed too. Slowly. Carol and others started a support group for queer youth, and I helped where I could. The church found a new pastor, one who preached inclusion. Some of my old congregation came back, not for me, but for the message. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. One evening, Ethan called me, his voice light. Jamie proposed. He said, "We're getting married next summer. You're my best man." I choked up, unable to speak for a moment. "I'm there," I said finally. "Always." The wedding was small, in a garden outside Columbus. Ethan looked radiant. Jamie steadied him with a quiet strength. I stood beside them, my heart full. In my speech, I didn't preach. I spoke as a brother, telling the story of a kid who'd taught me what love really meant. The crowd laughed, cried, and clapped. But Ethan's smile was all I needed. As I watched them dance, I thought of the diner, the park, the church, every step that had brought us here. I'd been the preacher, the one with all the answers. But Ethan, my little brother, had shown me the truth. Love doesn't need a cure. It just needs a chance to grow.